it's working, that should be it. Oh. That might be.
I have allergies now.
Yeah, today.
All right, I think it's exactly noon, so we'll get started. The first order of business is to approve last month's minutes. Does anybody have any comments that they want to add to last month's minutes? Hearing none, I'm going to approve the minutes from April 17th meeting. The next agenda item is if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak, now is your time. There is a 3-minute per speaker limit. Is there anyone online, Daphne, that wishes to speak that you see? No? Okay, hearing none, we will go to recommendations to the Common Council of the City Campus Committee options, discussion options 1 through 7, updates on the committee of the whole, and discussion and MEP analysis. Yeah, Brian.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I just wanted to maybe provide a little bit of context for some intended outcomes for the meeting today. Our goal for today should really be to review the additional feedback from the Common Council's Committee of the Whole meeting on May 7th and see if there's any consensus or a majority determination on a formal recommendation to provide to the City Council on options for further consideration. In addition, our goal today should be to conclude the formal work of the committee with a recommendation to Council and then suspend the regular meetings of this committee until and if the council should call upon this body again to review any future options or questions. Once this group is ready to make a recommendation, it'll ultimately be up to the Common Council and the community residents to determine our next course of action. The intent is to spend the next several months from the summer and fall in particular, continuing to engage with the community on the why for this project and get feedback on what an ultimate project may look like in terms of building locations, size, programming, massing, those type of things. And the goal of this engagement work is to lead up to a future referendum question on the ballot potentially for November 2026. On behalf of the city staff team working on this project, I'd like to sincerely thank you for your thoughtful analysis and hard work to get us to this point. And with the chair's permission, I'd like to turn things over to Planning Director Abby Toon just to give a quick overview of the staff developed pros and cons of the various options that's in front of you at your table. If you're,
Sounds great.
with
Thanks,
that.
Brian. Okay, Abby, go for it.
All right. So as Brian mentioned, this is the timeline that we presented at the Community Campus Committee meeting on March 20th. And we spent some time subsequent to that meeting working with the city staff team through the month of April. And then at our April meeting, we reviewed the cost estimates and the financing options for all 6 of the options at that time. And then in May, the city staff team met a couple of additional times, did some extra work. We held our committee of the whole meeting with our Common Council on May 7th, and we got a lot of really good feedback from the Common Council. I included the minutes from that meeting in your packet so you can see some of the questions that our council has. And what we are hoping to get to today, as Brian had mentioned, is a final Community Campus Committee recommendation that we can take to our Common Council on Tuesday, June 3rd for a formal presentation. So our staff from several departments worked together to come up with a pros and cons matrix document that's included in your packet, but I know it's difficult to read on the screen, and I printed large copies for each of you at your place. There are also, for members in the audience, there are also some additional copies on the table in the back. This was a collaborative effort from staff from the administration department, the senior center, library, parks and recreation, IT, and community development to come up with this matrix jointly. I think each of us had our own opinions about how to score these different options that have been put together by the committee. And there was some debate and discussion, but this is a joint recommendation, as I mentioned. And I just want to kind of go over some of the highlights for how we arrived at these different classifications. So the first goal that we listed was provide adequate space to meet the program needs. And only option 1, which is do nothing, and option 2, which is renovate in place without any expansion, do not meet the program needs that have been identified for this project. And so those scored low, while every other option meets the program needs and therefore scored high. The second category is modernizes the current facility. Option 1, do nothing, is scored low. Options 2 and 3, which are renovate in place and renovate and expand, we scored those as medium due to concerns that because of the extent of renovation, some of the shortcomings in the existing buildings may not be resolved or alleviated through a renovation process. And the remaining options, we scored those as high. In the category of utilizes downtown land efficiently, this goal was really one of the key driving factors for this entire project, which was to ensure that we are making the best use of our downtown land. When you think about what you want in a downtown from a land use standpoint, it is compact development, and that kind of was a driving factor of the project to better utilize the existing land, over half of which is currently in surface parking. Options 1 and 2 were scored low by the staff because they maintain all of the existing one-story buildings. Option 3, to renovate and expand, we scored that as medium because the addition to the library in that option provides some density of development that is more consistent with other sites in the downtown. And then the remaining options we scored as high because they better utilize the land in a way that is more consistent with a downtown environment. The next category is provides opportunity for public-private partnerships. And when we started this planning effort in 2019, public-private partnership was really a key goal of this committee. And then throughout the course of the process, the Community Campus Committee determined that the public-private partnership was less of a priority due to a few primary factors. The first one being municipal space needs. We have to really prioritize first our municipal space needs. And because of the space needs that are programmed, it really does maximize a lot of the land that we have available, thereby not leaving as much additional land for public-private partnerships. The second reason that we've kind of de-emphasized public-private partnerships is because of municipal financing requirements. If the city is going out and doing a borrowing using municipal bonding, we're really limited in what we can incorporate for private space without violating the requirements for municipal financing. And then the third is due to the complexity of the project. This project in and of itself is very complicated. And when you add public-private partnerships to the mix, it makes it even more complicated. But all of that being said about the de-emphasis of public-private partnerships, in this category, the staff team scored 2 concepts as high because of the possibility of public-private partnerships in the 2 options that leave the existing senior center building in place. And the consideration there was that the city may decide to keep that building, but then lease it to a business or even maintain some of the space for municipal needs and lease the remainder of the space to a private entity. And there are spaces within the senior center building that were previously leased to Edward Jones and Care Wisconsin at market rents. So we think that that could be an option. The next category is aligns with the approved sustainability goals. And for this category, really until we get to the design phase, It's really going to be difficult for us to determine how the buildings can meet the city's ambitious sustainability goals. But we have heard from members of this committee and from the Common Council that they view this planning effort as a pathway toward meeting the city's sustainability goals around net zero energy, net zero water, high quality stormwater management, resiliency, and more. The message that we heard pretty loud and clear from the committee of the whole meeting is that they want sustainability incorporated throughout the project and not as an afterthought. Based on what we heard and what we learned about the buildings from the MEP analysis, we rated options 1 and 2 as low, options 3 and 4 as medium, and option 5 and up as high potential to help meet the city's goals. The next category is supports downtown revitalization efforts. As we've seen throughout our downtown, Middleton has recently had a significant amount of private investment with the Middleton Center redevelopment project and also public investment with the Stonehorse Green gathering space. There is additional new investment being considered for other areas in the downtown, and the city buildings haven't kept pace with the property maintenance, reinvestment, and the quality of the private facilities. So under this category, we scored options 4 and up as high potential to support downtown revitalization efforts. The next category is design is compatible with surrounding land uses. All of the options fit within the currently designated zoning for the downtown. So from that standpoint, you could argue that all of the options are compatible because the city has already made a decision to zone these properties that accommodate these types of buildings. The staff did have concerns about option 7 because that option would remove both of the larger municipal parking lots, library and senior center. And we were concerned about the impact on nearby businesses by taking both lots. The next category is enhances streetscape and pedestrian oriented design in downtown. In a high pedestrian downtown environment, you want things like sidewalk access to destinations. You want to make building facades that are more interactive through placement of storefront windows and doorways, increasing building access from the sidewalks, locating surface parking away from walkways and screening surface parking with landscaping. And you want to create places that are welcoming for people with a variety of mobility needs, such as adults with strollers or people that use mobility devices like wheelchairs. The Plaza Street that is included in options 3 and up will help to slow traffic and prioritize people over cars. But the staff felt that options 5 and up provided a better pedestrian experience. And then the last category, and the one that is kind of the most difficult to convey, is meets the parking needs for the land use. So in the institutional zoning district, unlike most of the other zoning classifications, the parking needs are determined by the zoning administrator for these types of uses. And if you think about the 3 uses that we're talking about, the senior center, the library, and city hall, each of these have different needs for parking. So until such time that we have a building design with exact square footages of spaces for gathering, meeting rooms, capacity information, staffing information, offices, and we apply shared parking principles, we won't know the exact parking needs for these buildings. So what we came up with was a simplified method for measuring how each option meets the needs. The current parking ratio for the municipal buildings in downtown is 1 parking space per 529 square feet of building. So around 1 per 500 is an easy way to remember that. And we have had parking studies done for our downtown. And the summary of those findings is that we have enough parking to meet current needs, but as sites redevelop in the downtown, at a greater level of density, we need to ensure that each of those projects is meeting its parking needs on site, or we could create a parking shortage. So the way that we are looking at this is we came up with a criteria for what we would rank low, medium, and high. And high is pretty similar to how we park, the parking that we provide currently. So we have options that we looked at that were high and options that were medium, but option 3 in particular is ranked low because we are adding significant square footage, but we are not supplementing parking through underground means. And then we are also doubling the issue because we are occupying existing parking lots with building footprints, thereby reducing the overall parking. Option 6 provides the highest level of parking overall, but in keeping with downtown design standards, much of it is hidden under new buildings. So our staff recommendation is that the Community Campus Committee consider forwarding options 4 through 6 to the Common Council for further consideration, with an understanding that costs and phasing are an important consideration, as we heard at the committee of the whole meeting, and also with a commitment that the Community Campus Committee remains available for additional guidance through the remainder of the process as recommended or as requested by the Common Council. I just want to echo what Brian said, which is thanking this body for all of the work that you've put into researching other communities, taking tours, reviewing data, asking thoughtful questions that have gotten us to this point. And I want to give a special shout out to our chair, Justin Ballweg, who has been here with us since the very beginning, the very first meeting that we held, which was on November 5th of 2019, almost 6 years ago. Thank you for sticking it out. Most of our staff team, we have Tammy Derrickson from the Senior Center, Jocelyn Sansing from the library here, as well as the rest of the staff team. And we are all here to answer any questions that you have throughout your discussion.
With that, thank you, Abby. I guess we open it up to the rest of the committee if they have comments, questions.
Yeah, we had a lengthy meeting on Monday, discussion on this at the senior center. And there's a couple issues that it's hard for us to understand. This goes back to the original design that in all of options 4 through 6, you're expanding the library about 250% versus the city hall and the senior center at about 150%. We can't understand why the library has to be so big. A library is an important part of the city, but it has to be reasonable. When you look at the other cities in the area, Verona has a 33,000 foot square library. Wanakee 40,000, Sun Prairie is going to expand theirs to 60,000. But if you look at the population, Sun Prairie is 37,000, Middleton's 23, Verona's 14, and Wanakee is about 15,000. The growth rate is highest in Sun Prairie, and Middleton is near the bottom at about 2% per year. If you look at the cost of these projects, 55% of the cost of this whole project goes towards the library. We're you know, I guess we're happy with what we can get out of this, and we want to make it work. We looked at the price of the cost of this, and a lot of our members kind of swallowed when they looked at the cost of the assessments or new assessments on their property of maybe a max of $700 per year. But with that in mind, there's a number of things that we agreed to and was memorialized in our minutes for that meeting, is that if we build, everybody's kind of in favor of building a new building, but we know it can't cost that much. Our other option is more amenable to everyone, was option 4 of moving into the library and have it repurposed. We agreed to need, the need to enlarge our facilities, but I say we're concerned about the cost. We want the plans to succeed for the city center, and we would like to continually be involved in the process. Another issue we looked at is right now we're currently sharing the senior center with the youth organizations and after hours, and it seems to be working. The kids are a little noisy when we conduct a late meeting or something, but they have to have a place to go. We feel that instead of tearing down the senior center, it needs to be repurposed and put into either a youth center or additional office space for the city hall. Now, my own opinion on this, and I've mentioned it before, is Middleton is expanding to the north. And we talked about this briefly, that is fairness to all residents, that Middleton's going north. Maybe we should look at the city hall moving to a more convenient central location in the city. This is out of the perusal of this committee. But the other issue is that the Middleton has a problem. When I was on the transit committee, we don't have any internal transportation. So it's kind of essential that we get these located where people can get at them. We, as the senior center, and I know the library sure don't want to leave downtown Middleton, and I don't know what the stand is of the city, you know, the city hall. But that's what we came up with. So I told you I would hold off on any recommendations. And these are the recommendations that were approved by the Commission on Aging.
Thanks, Ken. There was a lot to unpack there. I think the first or the last comment about potentially moving one of these areas offsite, it was the Common Council that asked us specifically to look in these parcels, city-owned parcels. So I don't think at this point we can
Yeah, I
go
understand
beyond
that.
that. And then back to your first point, I think in the last slide that Abby was showing, I think once we get this to Common Council, there's obviously going to need to be some public outreach, some discussion about price and size. And part of that will probably be because of the high cost of this, reducing the square footage of this project as a whole. So I think that's certainly probably still on the table for not trying to speak for the Common Council, but I think that's still certainly.
Well, that was brought out in the discussion with the Common Council. So, I mean, we understood that, but it's just some of these numbers, when they start to stick out, you just begin to scratch your head of how they got there and what the demands are.
Right. And I think that's why, correct me if I'm wrong, but as the city staff was going through this, they didn't just have one option. They tried to
Yeah.
produce kind of a range of both scope and cost. And I think, at least in my opinion, we should put forth several options to them so that they're not landlocked in a decision, yes or no, but something that we can actually move forward. So
The other issue is, I know we've been pushing for, you know, sustainability, and that's very important. But if you look at Wanakee, you look at Verona, you look at Sun Prairie, there's a lot of open space around their libraries and their buildings, not necessarily in the downtown, but their library, like in Sun Prairie, where they're going to expand, that's all open fields and baseball fields where they can put in like a geothermal system. But the problem is we're so constrained by the size of the area that we're in. Some of this is very difficult to undertake. And I mean, it's important, you know, it's important we do it, but you know, we're just kind of fenced in here, you know, we're kind of boxed in the size of this, and that has to be a major consideration in which direction we want to go on sustainability.
yeah, there's definitely site limitations,
You know,
and especially for.
but I know, you know, you've talked about on the sustainability of Sun Prairie, but they got a big open space out there. I mean, they can be putting stuff underneath the baseball fields and everything else, and we're looking about ripping up parking lots and putting pavement on top. I don't know what the efficiency of some of that would be once you cover over in an area for a geothermal system if you do have pavement on top, because that's going to heat up in the summer, you know, not necessarily in the winter, but I don't know what the adiabatic, you know, changes are, but that's another consideration that goes down the road for some of these systems. Anyway, I'm off my bandwagon here.
No, that was all very thought provoking, and thank you, Ken. Did you have anything else to add? Otherwise,
Not right now.
okay. Okay, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to address, I think I heard Ken bring up, why is the library expanding this much percent and the other buildings only this much percent? And I just feel like that has to be addressed, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, we asked for these different places to tell us what they need for the future. And I don't remember asking them to limit to 150% or 100%. They were looking at needs for the future and needs for right now. And so I think it's an unfair thing to criticize the library for asking for this space that they're asking for. It might not be that we give it to them in the end.
Well, what I'm saying is if you look at other facilities, none of them are near 80,000 square feet, and I guess I question the need for the size of that library at 80,000 square feet.
Just to speak to this, I think that our library director and parks director could probably have input here, but the idea, if I'm not mistaken, is to take programs like the community theater program that's going on in the senior center when you're trying to have a meeting next door. Those programs are all strained for space. So right now, parks activities are occurring all over the city, and the library would be a place that can share those facilities and allow that programming to not have to share with the senior center or seek out around the city. So.
Jean, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that,
I'm
Jocelyn,
not library bashing, I'm just trying to bring out, everybody needs the library, that's where you get most of your education.
yeah, thank you. I think that we recognize that this process is preliminary in some set, that nothing is set in stone, and that there likely will be changes and modifications down the line as we get more feedback. That said, I did want to address a couple of the questions related to library space, space needs that were raised at the committee of the whole meeting last week. It seems appropriate to kind of talk about some of those now as we're talking about space considerations. The first is the library is a destination. The reality is Middleton is growing and library use is growing with it. What worked well in 1990 when the population was 13,000 has strained resources in 2025 when the population is over 23,000. The library is in fact a destination. It's an educational, informational, social, cultural hub, but it cannot grow beyond its current physical footprint in order to make room for more books, programs, and public spaces to support growing needs. Consider these impressive numbers from the just published 2024 Middleton Public Library Annual Report. And some of these data are later on in the large slide deck and in more detail. But in-person visits, there were about 270,000 people who visited the library in 2024. That's up 13% from 2023. And that trend continues in that direction. And according to these numbers, nearly 800 people visit the library each day. And last month in April, when the library launched the bookmobile, nearly 1,200 people visited on that day. In 2024, 106,997 website visits. That's up 13% from 2023. Study room bookings, 5,411 in 2024. That's up 21.5% from 2023. And if you've ever wandered down to the first floor at any point in the day, the study rooms are booked solid and buzzing with people working in small groups, interviewing for jobs, practicing speeches, learning English as a second language, and more. Computer sessions. There were 85,442 of them in 2024. That's up 8% from 23. People rely on this availability as they, do research, search and apply for jobs, communicate with friends, health professionals, read the news, and again, research topics of interest. Print jobs, there were 105,500 print jobs. That's up 25% from 2023. There were 983 programs at the library in 2024. That's up 4% from 23. That includes everything from story time for small children and their parents, educational lectures and book discussions, literacy programs, to family fun nights and more. And there were 35,586 people who attended those programs. That's up 20.5% from 23. That's an average of 36.2 people per program. Many of those programs are capped at a certain level because the library doesn't have spaces for large groups. And lastly, given its limited space and growing use, the library leadership has made the decision over a period of years to make more room for people and programming by reducing the space devoted to shelving for books. But Middleton residents are avid readers, both of ebooks and physical books, with high demand for both formats. So the reduction in shelf space has resulted in the need to borrow books, and lots of them, from other libraries in the South Central Library System. These transactions are reflected in the annual Dane County formula cost reimbursements. So more space for books will help to meet the high demand and varied interests of resident readers. The calculation of the library's space needs comes from the Department of Public Instruction's guidance for libraries, conversations with library staff and leadership, lots of data collected on every aspect of library use over time, as well as comparisons to other facilities. The expanded space is envisioned to include more study rooms for collaborative or individual work, larger and more flexible spaces and technologies for a range of activities, a much expanded children's department for more and larger reading programs and interactive activities, space to park, load, and unload the bookmobile at the library rather than at the municipal building where it is now, staff offices that are thoughtfully positioned based on workflows with noisy equipment segregated from offices, enough space so that the library could potentially become a voting site in the future, spaces for exhibitions, potentially a sustainable or usable rooftop, and yes, more books. I guess those are my comments for the moment. Jocelyn, do you need to add anything here?
No, thank you. Thank you, Jane. That was very thoughtful and insightful, and really wonderful to have on record. One of the questions that would be wise for us to be asking ourselves is, what does the maximum population of Middleton, could it look like? We have really great data from Tammy that she presented on what does the aging population look like. But if we're building something to this size and scale in our downtown, we have this one chance this time to really get it right. Not that we didn't get it right before, but it's this is kind of the one chance we've got. So, we're looking at not only all of these purposes and uses for the library, beyond just books as a place of gathering connection, but also how can we continue to grow into that, and how can we keep those spaces as flexible as possible for future use. So for example, if there's fewer families and we would ever need to, we would need to reduce our kids area. I don't know if that would ever happen, but it could. Then we're able to shift and use the building in different ways. One of the things that we get asked for a lot is rentable space. If we're working with a department like Parks and Rec, who's already set up to be able to accommodate transactions like that, then we've got space to work with in terms of the future. So I think we can really look at that square footage as an investment in the future. We can also look at it as a reduction from the 2015 space needs study that said the library needed to be over 100,000 square feet. That also included like a large amphitheater, a really big kids area, there's a lot of efficiencies that could happen within 150,000 square feet total. And that really comes with the design process.
Thanks all for all your comments, and I think there's been a lot of work so far done with the programming and getting these sized, and I think there'll be continue to be a lot of work going forward. These are preliminary. Everything will not, I promise you, will not look like these options exactly when we move forward. But I would like to steer the discussion back to what the Common Council has asked us to do, and that is put forward some options at this point. I'd like any feedback on either the chart with the low, medium, high, or specific comments on any of the options. I would note that option 7 was not part of our last meeting. The consultants put that in as part of a request for the committee as the whole, so they did see that, but I don't know that anybody, this option was not presented to us last time. So with that being said, is there any comments regarding any of the options, or particularly the 3 options that the staff has recommended to put forward? This is staff recommendations. We can certainly recommend the same as the staff or recommend our own. So with that being said, does anybody have any comments on that? Because at the end of the day, we would like to be able to send to Common Council a recommendation.
I still wonder if we should have an 8th option, having senior center and library together.
Senior center and library together.
I
So-
still feel like that would be a good idea too.
Yeah, I think previously we've had pushback from the senior center that wouldn't be ideal for them, and I think that's why that was taken off the table earlier. But
I also, sorry to interrupt, Jocelyn had a comment about security with preference for City Hall to be with the library. And I liked your comment. I'm wondering if you could repeat that, just to help me understand, help everyone understand why you think that combination is better than the library and senior center, which I thought was going to be a better option as well.
Sure, I think there's a lot of pros and cons to both. When we look at day-to-day operations and where do we want to maximize our impact in terms of access to those resources to residents, the library is already open until 8 p.m. When we're looking at staffing a building in terms of safety and security, this building, for example, after hours meetings, especially ones that happen in conference room B, are not, it's not a secure building. This is a challenging space to be in after hours. We have not, in terms of square footage or program or terms of programs, necessarily had in-depth discussions about how we could do that operationally. But I think when we're looking at flexible spaces, reservable spaces, meetings and things happening in the evening, those things are happening the most at City Hall and the library, and there's a need for more support for Parks and Recreation. So.
So,
that
yeah,
convince you?
I guess I don't know how to like,
I just thought there'd be like shared space. I still want a senior center in the library, so like maybe there can be fundraising for it, more so than for City Hall. I don't care as much about City Hall. So I just thought there are more opportunities for like fundraising.
I think this is a great area for more public input and engagement.
any other comments?
I would like to commend the staff on putting the matrix together. There was a lot of options with a lot of pros and cons, and I think that you did a really good job kind of summarizing this for us. So thank you to the city staff for all of the work that you've put into this to help us kind of get the overall view of each option and the, how to move forward with a recommendation. So thank you.
This is not in direct relationship to making a recommendation, but it seems to me that the library in all of the proposals or preferred options is a multi-level building. And council, I would think, could exercise the option to maybe take it down one story if we can't afford the full height. But also, I'm wondering if there are ways to construct the building. And I think part of our mission here is to look into the future that will allow for more easy expansion. So a basic question I have is, could a library, start at 3 levels and be added on to the 4th? Or is that a lot more expensive than going out to a side? It's maybe immaterial for our final decision today, but it seems to me that we want to have as much flexibility going forward. And it's hard to know exactly how libraries will be used in 10 years or how big the city's going to be. Obviously constrained on the north side of the city as well, once we get up past Bell Farm anyway, unless we acquire more land. And the city's going to have to go up. And I think that also has transportation implications too.
No, I think the more flexibility we afford ourselves for the future is a good
Also,
thing.
there was a question earlier about whether there was enough geothermal to be had if we removed the senior center, and I don't know if that ever got answered or not. Or is geothermal totally constrained to what space we have today? And if we don't have an answer to that today, that's fine. I was just curious.
Yes, we do have an answer to that. There isn't sufficient space on site to fully heat and cool all of the buildings with geothermal only. Findorf even explored putting wells in under the street. So in terms of sustainability, the key here is going to be a mix of various strategies, including geothermal, including solar, in order to meet those sustainability goals. Does
Thank
that
you.
make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments / questions in regard to the matrix that we see below. The first is for the provides opportunity for future and public-private partnerships. I know, as Abby mentioned, that's become a lesser goal. Specifically for number 4 and 7 are low, but for 5 and 6 are high. That's due to keeping the senior center. While I agree with that assessment, by removing the senior center, it allows for more land for future work, whether it be public or private. So downgrading 7 and 4, because we're keeping the senior center in those 2 options. I understand why they did it this way. I think in reality that the other 2 might actually provide more opportunity down the road. And then secondly, because they don't have keeping the senior center in them, I think 5 and 6 actually provide a higher use of land efficiency downtown. That building as it is, as we all know, is pretty inefficient as stated and isn't the greatest use of land. So just kind of combining those 2, although 7 and 4 are listed here as low on 4, I think depending on how you look at it, they might actually be higher. And then I think they're also higher when it comes to the utilizing downtown land efficiently. The second thing that I wanted to bring forward is the low designation for number 7 for compatible with surrounding land use. Although it would remove the parking lots directly adjacent, I think This would shift the parking lots on the edge of downtown, providing a buffer between the downtown and the adjacent residents. And so if there's concern about, like, for instance, having Hubbard Avenue not having a parking lot right next to them, they would now just have to walk past the municipal building to get there, just like many of the other downtown buildings. And they do also have their own parking lot with their handicap spot right there on the west end. So I question downgrading option 7 to low for that reason, or for those reasons. If there's another reason that the staff who put this together downgraded that to low. Is there anybody here that has any comments or?
I don't recall any other reason beyond the concern about impacting the businesses. You know, as I mentioned previously, we've had parking studies that have told us that we have adequate parking in the downtown. But I can tell you that we work a lot with the downtown business community, and it is a very common concern amongst the business community that there is a perception from their customers that there is a lack of parking in the downtown. And so we were kind of just, I think that we wanted to make sure that that was part of the discussion, just, you know, in terms of like public input. That is something that we hear a lot in City Hall, is concern about parking.
And I can also kind of echo what Abby said, kind of representing the business community, that they feel, and, you know, I've heard the perception is that there's not enough parking downtown. So I can understand, you know, especially since I'm gonna be the whiner here. It's end of May and it's cold and people don't want to walk, right? So, you know, I hear that a lot. I know DMBA has voiced that a lot. My colleague Kristen sits on the DMBA board, and you know, it definitely is a consideration that I think
Assuming the same amount of
the
parking,
Downtown Middleton Business Association.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yep, sorry.
assuming that the same amount of parking could be provided in both 6 and 7, having the parking instead of in between the municipal buildings and the rest of downtown, and the flip-flopping that and having the parking between the residents and the rest of downtown, do you feel like that is a significant downgrade? I mean, I think
No,
it would also allow us to, like, potentially more easily close down the street and still be able to get in and out of the parking.
I don't
as
think it's a
well.
downgrade. I think a lot
Okay.
of, when you start using words like perception, it's about, okay, what's our communication plan? What's the wayfinding? How are we gonna make sure that the public knows where the parking is? You know, not just right when they're on it, but as they're coming into downtown. So, you know, I think it's, you know, working with possibly the city PR and, you know, the chamber and.
Want a hand?
And those types of things to just make sure that the community is aware and the businesses are aware as well.
But
Okay.
don't you think as we expand our facilities and more people start coming downtown, the parking issue is gonna get worse? I mean, I don't know how far out we're looking, but we're looking out several years here, maybe 10, 15 years. And if we've increased the size of the senior center and library, city hall, there's gonna be more people coming here, and we're kind of tied into just a limited number of spaces. That parking will always be an issue and probably get worse in the future in downtown Middleton.
I mean, yes, I mean, as a community grows and people come in and, you know, we have a tourism department, you know, inviting people to come and stay here. I do, though, think that I trust the studies that are done. And so if we're having, you know, if we're spending the time and resources to have parking studies done, I kind of look at those numbers. And then again, it's a matter of, you know, I know that there's in the T-Wall parking, it has parking, and no, people don't utilize it. So it's just making sure that people know that that's there and that they're utilizing the parking, both off and on street, that we do have. And I don't think that's being done today either.
And I think just to your point, Ken, yes, I think
Yeah, it's a little small for the.
possibly go up. And I think that's why
These are.
many of our recommendations should maximize the
Why
amount
did
of ground and surface parking, realizing that at this point, there's no appetite to do a parking structure in the downtown area. So I think those are as well as on-street parking, I think those are the tools that we have in our toolkit right now. And I think that's part of the reason why options 1, 2, and 3 were not recommended by the staff. The last thing, and you might find a theme to this, as far as the parking it goes. So option 6 says high, option 7 has medium, and I'm questioning that. I think option 7 actually has more potential for underground because we don't have the senior center we do have the senior center being removed, so therefore we would have opportunity to go underground there. I think also in option 4 and 7, I think if we remove the little appendage that we have sticking out on the east side of that and formed a more cohesive block in the current parking, I think we could pick up quite a bit of surface parking there as well. So I also question having option 6, having a higher amount of parking capacity than option 7, although like Abby and Brian mentioned, we won't know the exact counts until we get further into design. Each layout has, different strengths and weaknesses as far as parking goes. Parking requires a specific amount of dimensions and grade changes that are required. So once you get into design, we'll have a better idea. But in my mind, the two lows and the medium placed on option 7 make it seem like it's a far or it makes option 6 feel far superior in my mind. Option 7 is still a very valid option and potentially a better option than option 6 in my mind.
Just wanted to clarify 2 things on option 7. One being that there is not currently underground parking in the new senior center building that I'm circling here with my cursor. That is not included in the current option 7. And then the second thing, Justin had mentioned the appendage, which is what I'm circling here with my cursor. And the consultant said that that area has roughly 11,700 square feet. And that would be replicated in options 4 and 7.
Yes.
I want to circle back to Ken's thought of like, if we have more services, more people are gonna want to come. I would like to keep the pressure on my fellow council members to keep pressing to have an internal city transportation system. I've always wanted to see something like that would connect to the Madison bus system, but within the city, we could get places. And I hope there's a future for that. And that might alleviate the need for more than we're even giving as far as parking spaces. So with the public's help, maybe we can keep that pressure on.
Yeah, there's just, people in the north side of town, there's just no way. I see at the library, a lot of parents are driving their kids there, but there's a lot of people in the Q&M area and the Allen Boulevard area that they may not have the cars, or they may not be able to get their kids here. So either you move the library out there somewhere, or you develop an internal transportation system in Middleton to get people around. We have that same problem with the senior center of trying to get people from the outskirts of Middleton, the other parts of Middleton into the senior center. I agree with you 100% on that.
Great.
That's always been pushed on the transit committee.
So, quick question, Abby, is the reason why option 7 isn't a recommendation, does it have a lot to do with cost and parking?
I think cost was definitely a factor in the back of our minds because most of the staff team attended the committee of the whole meeting and heard that concern from the council directly. But I think also we were just concerned about parking and that the numbers were lower in option 7, but that did not include maximizing underground parking because the senior center building, as it's shown, doesn't have underground parking. So, and then I think there also was a concern, which I shared with Justin earlier this week, that the new building, the new senior center building is similar in size to the library, which would be demoed under this option, the current library.
Okay.
And the thinking amongst at least some of the staff members was, you know, the library building through the MEP analysis has its deficiencies, but when you look at that building compared to the other facilities, it wasn't quite to the level of like the city hall building in terms of like needing significant upgrades.
Sure.
And so we thought, given how that library is constructed with open and wide spans, it could be retrofitted and renovated. And so we thought, well, why would you take down that building and then put up a new building that's around the same size? So we were concerned about the community, you know, thinking, well, that library is in decent shape and what the perception in the community would be from that.
And then could I ask a question to the committee? I guess, can I ask it in a different way? You know, the 3 options that have been recommended, are there any reasons why we wouldn't want to recommend them as the 3 options? Makes sense?
To me, option 5 is not viable just for the consultant analysis of this building. Even with an addition to this building, remodeling it does not seem feasible. To me, options 4 and 6 are the only feasible options here.
I agree.
And then just a comment on option 7. Yes, you could go underground with parking under the senior center, but that's going to drive your costs way up. And that's already the highest estimate in this packet. I will note, personally, a preference on option 6. I think that allows you your best ability to phase because you're keeping that old senior center building, and that way, as you go through, you know, whichever building is going to get built first, you have the ability to use that other building for whatever you need in the meantime. And I would anticipate that would be the least disruption for all of our department needs.
I would add to that, option 7 is actually very clean as well. It is providing a new senior center in the existing library parking lot, moving them over, demoing the existing senior center, building the new building there, moving everybody over. Everybody just moves in that scenario as well.
Yes, several of them are noted as a 1 move per department, but the thing that option 6 offers that option 7 doesn't is that there's an empty building at any point in the phase. So whether that's storage, whether that's programming needs, that just allows for that much more flexibility in the city's plan. And we all know that schedules get interrupted as construction goes on. So that's kind of a fall safe as well.
Any other comments from anyone? I think I tend to agree that option 4 is probably a better option, a preferred option. It's a question of how many options do we want to provide the common council at this point.
Common council, how many options? I think 2 is reasonable. It narrows things down enough, but still leaves room for discussion.
Did you say 2 or 3? 2? I tend to agree with the options 4 and 6. I also didn't mind option 5 as long as it was truly renovated, but I'm going to take my advice from the architect that that's not a good option. And so go with the pro. So I think I like options 4 and 6. I want to revisit the sustainability goal before. And just remind myself or have someone remind me of why that doesn't get a better score.
Which option were you asking about?
4. Why does the 4 get a
Medium.
medium, excuse me, I'm looking on the wrong line. Medium score for sustainability on number 4.
I think that the thinking was because it combines a renovation and,
Oh, so it's not getting all of the top new technology, et cetera?
right, although option 5 also includes renovation. So I don't know if it had to do with the actual MEP report or if maybe option 5 should also be a medium, which I think is more likely. I think the consideration was if we're renovating based on what we learned through the MEP report, it's going to be a little bit more hard for the city to meet our sustainability goals than it will be with new construction. And so I think that that should be a medium, and I think the one next to it should also be a medium.
Got it. That makes sense to me too. And then the pedestrian oriented design gets a medium on number 4. And that's because of the
For that, I think it was, the discussion was that I think it might be due to concerns about massing of the building, of the new building, and how we can make sure that that is designed appropriately to fit into the streetscape.
I just want
Yeah,
all my
I'm
arguments. in
I'm
line
very,
for the council.
I agree with you that 4 seems like the better option, but if you just look at this, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
it gets a
And I
worse
think-
score than
right,
5,
right. And
yeah.
I think there is something misleading.
Justin?
And I think part of that's like looking at this and in your mind, like weighing it all the same, right? Like number 1 has the same weight as number 6 in this list, which may or may not be true as well. And there's different gradients, within each of these categories. So,
Yeah, it's not clear cut.
right. When you look at a chart, it seems clear cut, but nothing's clear cut. So,
Justin, Alder Hanairo, who represents District 6 in Middleton, is on the Zoom and has her hand raised if you wish to hear her comment or question.
oh yeah, Alder, go ahead.
Thank you. And I want to add my thanks to everyone else's for all of you taking the time to really, grapple with this. This is a vexing problem, and your work has been really important and helpful to the council. Mr. Chair, I appreciate your efforts to advocate for option 7. I know this one was added to, just throw some new ideas out there. And going back to Abby's comments about the new senior center in option 7 being similar in size to the current library, which would be demoed. I'm wondering, what about the option of, if the current library is in decent shape as a building and has the same amount of space as we're looking at for a future senior center, why not consider an option to preserve that building and renovate it and retrofit it for the senior center? And do the rest of the building in option 7, but not not change basically the south side of the street. I think that would seem to be a potential cost savings, and it could also demonstrate to the public that we're really trying to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars by, preserving what we have if we can, and yet still providing the space that we need. And then regarding the concerns about the parking, there will still be underground parking in the new facility in option 7. And I don't want people to forget about that. We don't have the design, so we don't know how accessible that will be for the businesses to the west. But I just want people to remember there will be parking available. It's just not showing in the images. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to address your first comment, yeah, I think option 4, I don't know if we can pull that up on screen. So option 4, I think, is showing exactly what you're referring to, and rehabbing the existing library into the senior center, and then having a new building to house both City Hall and the library on the north side of the street. Is this what you were talking about, Alder? Something similar in concept?
Yes, I guess I was looking at option 7 and didn't realize that option 4 addresses just what you said, that the existing library would be remodeled, and the costs do appear to be lower.
Yes, so option 4 and option 7 are very similar, and then option 5 and option 6 are very similar. One has a remodeled building, for repurposed remodeled building, and the other two are all new builds.
So what I'm hearing is, for the most part, options 4 and 6 seem to be, people are nodding their head yes to 4 and 6. And then 7 and 5 are a little bit of a question mark, I guess. I would ask, we've had some conversations about pros and cons. If we were to eliminate option 5, which was a recommendation from the staff, is there anything we're missing, Abby, that we should know about before completely eliminating that option? Or maybe you could say kind of review the pros and cons, or the differences between option 5 and 7, if we want to try to get this down to 2 to 3 options to present.
The only concern with eliminating option 5, which would repurpose the senior center, add on to the seniors, or I'm sorry, repurpose the city hall for the senior center, along with an addition where the Meals on Wheels could be more proximate to the parking spaces, compared to option 6, which is a quite similar option, only rather than repurposing city hall, building a brand new senior center. The only differentiating factor is cost, except that there are major concerns amongst the staff that it would, how easily is this building going to be renovated based on what we have learned through the MEP process? And I know accessibility is a major concern for the senior center. They do not want spaces where you're walking through one program to get to another. And so I think that there are pretty big concerns about whether or not the city hall building could meet their needs under a renovation and addition option. So I don't think that
Which
there
is
would be
in
any
5.
which is option 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a long way of saying, I don't think that the staff team would have major concerns with eliminating option 5 due to our concerns about whether a renovated city hall can meet the needs of the seniors.
And then as a committee, if we were to limit the options to 2, where does, and it sounds like everybody's shaking their heads to 4 and 6, where does option 7 come in? Because I feel like there's some.
Yeah, so between 4 and, just backing up, between 4 and 5, I think 4 has a lot of pluses to it, and I don't see why we would, if there would be, why we would want to go forward with 5 and not with 4. The cost is similar. The we're keeping, I feel like in 4, the better existing building. So I feel comfortable, like you mentioned, recommending removing 5 and leaving 4. When it comes to 6 and 7, I have a similar opinion, that I feel one is better than the other, and they're both similar in cost and similar. So I understand people may feel differently than me as far as they feel about 6 is better. I think 7 is better in my professional opinion, but, that's just, I'm just one person on this committee, so.
So 4 has made it.
It's made the team.
I think 4 makes a lot of sense, both as far as the cost goes, providing the amount of space that we're requiring. I think in 4 and in 7, I would highly recommend removing that appendage. I think that gets us back into not a very good use of downtown land, having a 1-story, 2-story building on it. But those are my
Aaron,
comments.
Can you also kind of, as an, I'm not in this realm of, architecture or planning, talk a little bit about your perception of the difference between 6 and 7 and the pros and cons. And I know that you kind of did, but bear with me and just maybe do it again.
Sure. Yeah, just some additional options of why I guess I'm looking at 6 in preference to 7. Parking needs are clear cut in that chart. 4 and 6 have the highest parking. Yes, we could add more parking in 7 underground, but it's already the highest project estimate. It's only going to drive things higher. And frankly, from the point of downtown businesses, I'll say it again, I know we have adequate parking needs, but underground parking tends to be that hidden parking that people don't see as accessible. So being able to keep that adjacent parking lot. And then cost-wise, this is something that we haven't noted, but keeping that existing senior center, don't forget that there's an option to sell that or repurpose it for additional revenue for the city. That's only going to take the total cost down when we look at that net impact on finances. Let's see. I know there's been a lot of debate about the transition from the neighborhood, just taking into consideration, while it might seem like a better buffer to locate parking lots on that west side for both for option 7, I feel like that it's hard because where the entrance, I know this is just a very basic massing, but where the entrance is, there's currently streetscape without accessibility to those entrances. But I would think, from having personally done parking studies, that it's going to drive even more traffic coming from the direction of the neighborhood. So having those lots on the other side probably would have less impact on the residents overall.
A comment on the senior center and keeping it. I think if we do keep it, whether it remains city owned or if they find a tenant, I think it will need improvements. And I think it just perpetuates the 1-2-story building downtown. I don't think it's a good use of land use, even if it wouldn't be used right away. Like, it's then able to have parking underground. It's then able to be built on top of with a higher land use. So short term, maybe we can use it as kind of a patch, but I think we're just kicking the can down the road with that building, in my opinion. And so I don't see it being necessarily a huge asset to keep that building if it's not being functionally used for an intended purpose.
So do we think 2 options is enough to send to the council?
I guess. Could we, so I think, does everybody agree that we should go ahead with proposing 4 to the council? Any disagreements?
Can you take a vote on that and see where people stand?
Yeah, absolutely. So, does it have to be in the, yeah,
Do you want me? Yeah, I move that we send forward option 4 to the common council.
all those say, let's say aye.
Oh, wait,
Or,
second.
There was second.
All those that say aye to option 4?
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. So as part 1, we're moving ahead with option 4. Okay. As far as option 5 goes,
Motion?
yeah, it's motion. You want to do it again?
Yeah. I move that we strike option 5 as an option for the council.
Any
I will
seconds?
second that.
Second. All those say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, second part, option 5 is being removed. All right. All those, should we just keep
Ready?
on going down?
Yeah, I
Okay.
move that we send option 6 forward to the common council.
I will second that.
All those that say aye, or
Aye.
all those that agree say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, option 6 goes forward.
For discussion, I move that option 7 forward to the council.
I'll second that. All those that agree say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That 3 ayes? Okay.
Show of hand.
Show of hands, sorry. I didn't see all that want 7 to go forward. 5 out of 9. Is that what I'm
Can you
reading?
get hands for opposed?
Opposed?
I guess I am.
4. Motion passes 5 to 4.
Okay.
So, motion to propose option 4, 6, and 7 to go forward to common council. I'll motion that. Any second?
I'll second.
All that agree, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I think we have our motion to move forward. I think that was all on our agenda today. So thank you all for participating over the last several years and forward, and we'll get direction from moving forward.
I'll keep you informed.
It's great.
Need a
Thank
motion
you
to
all.
adjourn?
That being said,
Thank you, staff.
yeah, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Well, you want to get out, don't you?
Thanks.
We-
Yeah,
You knew that.
Accomplished. We gotta get out.
Used to be.
Where's your office at?